Welcome to Trash Compactor. I'm Josh. August 29th is one of those dates that just rings a bell in my mind, and I'm never quite sure why. But if I stop and I think about it, the reason is, and this is incredibly nerdy, August 29th, 1995 was the release date for the THX remastered Star Wars trilogy on VHS, more commonly known as the Faces release. This year, I realized that it is the 30th anniversary of the release of this particular box set, which is quite something. Can't believe it's been 30 years. And I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive on this box set because I think for a lot of people, this was an important set. It was famously advertised as the last time that the original unaltered Star Wars trilogy would be made available. And with the exception of the bonus features on the 2004 DVD release, that seems to be true. I'm sure my guest will correct me on that if I'm wrong, but whenever I want to know anything about Star Wars on home video, I think of one person, returning guest. He is the author of Saga on Home Video, a fan's guide to Star Wars home video releases, the creator and host of From the Star Wars Home Video Library on YouTube. And are you still the webmaster of StarWarsFanWorks.com?
I am, although I don't use it for a whole lot. It's more a hub for my stuff now, but a good place to find info on, the end stuff.
Okay, well, then I'll leave that in the intro. Welcome back, Nathan Butler, to Trash Compactor. How you doing, Nathan?
Hey, glad to be here. I am doing well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. So when I reached out to you to do this episode, were you aware that it was the 30th anniversary of this particular release, or did that sort of hit you between the eyes like it did me when I realized it?
It's funny. I spent the last several months recording and releasing another series, the Star Wars Home Video Year by Year on YouTube that looks at the major releases of each year. And I had actually recorded this one a while back, about 95. I remember mentioning around the time, hey, you're coming up on the 30th anniversary. And then in the time between recording that and now, it kind of disappeared. Right? I think everybody's so caught up in, the anniversary of Revenge of the Sith that
Hmm.
I don't know that the anniversary of this set was on the radar. I know I thought of it at the time, but it was not something that was at the forefront. It felt like just another August, as you could say.
No, indeed. Yeah, I don't know of many people that recognize the anniversaries of specific VHS releases, but we're a particular breed of Star Wars fanatics. And if you're listening to this, hopefully you will find it as interesting as we do. But the big thing that I remember about this release was the way that they were advertising, not just the fact that it was the last time the original trilogy would be made available, because we knew that George Lucas was working on the special edition, but also that these were remastered in THX. And if you could explain the significance of that, and then, the films were already available on VHS. So if you happen to know anything about why they decided to do this release in the first place.
Sure. This is a bit of a story. I guess, first of all, the THX thing. So the idea was that in the early 80s, really kind of heading towards Jedi, Lucasfilm, one of the things that they were working on was a THX sound system named for Tomlinson Holman, who was the guy who was one of the leads on it. It was not really for home viewing or anything like that at the time. The idea was they wanted to offer a sound system that would be sort of high fidelity sound for theaters. And eventually that evolved into a certification process. Like THX wasn't a process per se, it was a standard that you had to meet. So if you were going to show a movie in a theater, if it was a THX certified theater, there's not a lot of noise from the other theaters right next to it. It's giving you the colors and the sound mix and the dynamics of that the original creator intended. That became sort of a standard to use for sound and picture quality. And THX, the company, could handle that, or it could be something that's certified. And the release that actually led to this began its life not in 95, but in 93. It's kind of three important years. There's 93, 94, then 95. In 93 is when they put out the so-called Definitive Collection Laserdisc set, which was the master that will be used for those VHS releases. We had seen Laserdiscs for really all formats. We've seen Laserdisc, CED, VHS, and Beta in the US since 82 for the films, well, for A New Hope, at least starting in 82. But widescreen wise, we hadn't really seen a whole lot. We had seen widescreen in Japan, and I believe it was 86 and 87. And then a version of that came over here in 89, 90. Then as you're getting into the early 90s and widescreen is becoming more of a thing, they put out this sort of prestige set, just massive brick, 9 discs, CAV standard play discs rather than extended play. So you could do stuff like freeze frame, but it was only half an hour per side. So you needed 9 discs. But it actually had a bunch of bonus features, which you really didn't see. It added bonus features. It even had not full audio commentary, but like spot point of interest commentary, where if you switch from the digital audio track to analog, you could actually hear commentary on certain parts. Huge, super cool set. Came with a full copy of George Lucas' The Creative Impulse, just with no dust jacket in the US for some reason. The Japanese got that, we did not. And just a really great set. But that meant that there was a master out there that was now THX remastered, THX certified, whatever you want to call it. It was the master that was the closest to what Lucas intended color and sound wise, like, or picture and sound wise. And then what happens is in the UK, there's a guy named Simon Hewlett, who is working for Fox Video at the time. Notice that the Star Wars films on VHS in the UK were still constantly in the top 100 selling VHS cassettes. And there was no marketing. It was just, these are solid films, they're classics. Everybody's wanting to add them to their collection. A New Hope had been on home video for over a decade at that point, and yet people were still buying them. And the thought was, what kind of success could we have if we actually put a marketing push behind the trilogy this time around? And so what happens was they do that kind of as an experiment. And without getting actual certification on the packaging, there is a transfer of that Laserdisc master onto widescreen and full screen VHS releases in the UK in 94. They're the ones, if you find them, they say digitally mastered or digitally remastered up at the top of all of them. That proves to be pretty successful. And as a result, there's sort of this realization, well, if that works in the UK, why not do something worldwide? So the very next year in 95, we get the first, I believe, VHS cassettes ever certified for THX, which is the original trilogy being released in full screen and widescreen across the world. But it was the same master we saw 2 years earlier on the Laserdisc set, only now you're not switching sides every 30 minutes. And it's essentially a proof of concept from 94 that even makes it happen in the first place. But that's the one people remember because, a lot of folks had VHS, not Laserdisc. So folks forget about the definitive collection. In the US, we tend to ignore other markets a lot of the time. So we forget about what happened in 94 to even set the stage. 95 is really when this new version makes this big splash, and it's a huge marketing push at the time. So it's the one remembered and the one we celebrate the 30th now.
Yeah, it was a huge marketing push. I still remember billboards for a VHS release of what was then almost a 20-year-old movie.
They did a bunch of tie-in stuff too. You don't usually see tie-ins with VHS releases, but you had reissues of the novelizations, of the comic adaptations, of the scripts, all with these covers designed to look like the US version. That we think of as the Faces version because our packaging has the faces on it. We are really the region of the Faces version. For the rest of the world, it's not the Faces version because the art isn't Faces. But that's what you'd see. Like a lot of product lines of US Star Wars stuff from 95. And if it got a reprint in 95, it's going to have that face on it. They even did a Corn Pops thing, a Corn Pops cereal, did a mail away of the making of Star Wars. It was an alternate version with Don LaFontaine doing the narration instead of William Conrad on VHS. And it came in a package that was basically like the Vader face for A New Hope, except it was done almost like it was a sketch slowly becoming real.
I was going to ask you about that because I mailed away for that VHS and I got it, even though I didn't eat Corn Pops. I actually don't think I was even allowed to have sugared cereal. But I somehow got those proof of purchases so that I could get that edition because I was a little annoyed. The previous VHS releases, the box set came with a VHS of the From Star Wars to Jedi documentary. And this one, even though it had the Leonard Maltin, George Lucas interviews at the beginning, it was sorely lacking in supplemental material for my tastes.
Oh, yeah.
So I was really pleased to get the mail away of the making of Star Wars VHS and the fact that it was designed so that when you sit it next to the VHS of the trilogy on your shelf, it looked like it was of a piece. I was very pleased about that.
Yep. Yeah, they did. Unfortunately, the other one wasn't so lucky. They did re-release From Star Wars to Jedi, the making of a saga the same year. And it's ugly. It's basically a VHS case where they have 3 horizontal strips. It's like split into thirds. And each one is a little piece of one of the Faces covers. It's the weirdest looking VHS cover of almost any Star Wars release. It is so ugly. But at least they did get a re-release. Classic Creatures Return of the Jedi and SPFX The Empire Strikes Back, the other 2 of those early making of specials, didn't wind up with anything in 95, at least here. You're talking about being missing supplemental materials. When we get a chance to talk in a bit about the UK stuff, they got something amazing. We just didn't. The US market got really, really got it screwed on this. All we got were the Leonard Maltin interviews, which are cool enough, but nothing compared to what the UK got.
About those Leonard Maltin interviews, do you have any idea the motivation behind that? Was it sort of, these movies have been out on VHS for 10 plus years already, so we need to create some sort of a differentiator, or is it just one of those?
I mean, I would assume so, but I don't know that I've heard any specifics. I mean, I do know that when they promoted them, they did tend to promote the new interview on them. What was interesting to me with the promotion was something that a lot of times gets missed looking back on it because we're so used to just where this was in the story of Star Wars. Now, you mentioned that they were talking about, that this would be the last time we could get the original versions. We'll get the special editions going forward, except for what they do actually with the definitive collection stuff in '06 and '08 on DVD. But at the time this was coming out, if you watch the old previews, it's the original one last time and all that. But it's your last time to see the original version of Star Wars, the film that began the Star Wars trilogy. They
Right.
hadn't even announced that we were going to get Empire and Jedi as special editions yet, only A New Hope. So when people are picking up these sets or picking up even individually, there was almost a disconnect between where this really is in Star Wars home video history and what they were promoting. Because again, they were really emphasizing the A New Hope thing. We would have assumed Empire and Jedi were going to be unchanged, but they weren't 2 years later.
So that's interesting. Something that I think just clicked with me, on the spines, you have the logos for the films, the titles for Star Wars: A New Hope. It's Star Wars
Mhm.
with a little subtitle, A New Hope. And for Empire and Jedi, the logos are not the Star Wars logo and the subtitle. It's The Empire Strikes Back and Return to the Jedi. And it struck me that this was the first time, and probably the only time, when Star Wars was still Star Wars, the movie Star Wars, but they were sure to have the A New Hope
Mhm.
subtitle to sort of differentiate it from the umbrella franchise Star Wars, and also probably, paving the way for the acceptance of the film as Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, knowing that there was a new trilogy on the way. So, with the exception of the special editions, I don't know that Star Wars: A New Hope was ever really again branded as Star Wars: A New Hope.
And that's, I mean, we see that a little bit later, but yeah, early on, it was always Star Wars. And it's funny because when you think about the timing of all of this, there was never until those 2006 editions, that the bonus disc on the DVDs in 2006 and 2008, where they took the definitive collection, basically the THX remastered edition, sliced the crawl off and replaced it with a scanned film one that has no subtitle or episode number. There were no home video releases of the full film, at least in the US, without the subtitle and episode number,
Right.
because they hit in '82. You'd had, we saw where I guess the confusion comes in, just because I'm very pedantic. I'm very detail oriented. That's a better way to put it. So people will say, like, is this the original version, the THX remastered? Is this the original version of the films? It depends on what they're asking. If they're asking, is it pre-special edition? Absolutely. And in fact, it's one of the better looking ways to watch it pre-special edition. But to my mind, no, this is like A New Hope this is like the fifth one, because you've got in theaters, there's the original opening crawl, no episode number, no subtitle, crawl's a little bit different. And C-3PO's line about, a power loss at one of the terminals will allow the ship to leave isn't there. That's in '77. They fix C-3PO's line in '78, still the original crawl. '79, they do another re-release of essentially the same thing. Empire comes out in '80. In '81, they put it out again. Now it's got the updated crawl alignment, the episode number, the subtitle. C-3PO's line is gone again for some freaking reason. But that becomes the basis of the '82 releases. And then in '85, Ben Burtt remasters the audio. So you get a slightly different, just imperceptibly different audio from like '86 up until these. So to my mind, this is like the fifth or whatever version, and at least the second version because of the THX cleanup stuff of Empire and Jedi. But people don't really, that's not kind of how they look at it. But it's interesting to me, though, aside from just that very detail oriented, nitpicky kind of way of looking at it, it does mean that literally the entire time that the film has been on home video, not only has Empire existed, so people knew Star Wars was the series name, Empire Strikes Back was the film name, and therefore A New Hope was the film name. but until this point, you really don't see A New Hope on the label, which is why I think even now you still have people. I still have people when I do videos on this stuff, they start complaining because I refer to the film as A New Hope. I'm like, well, I'm not referring to the series. I'm referring to the film and I'm trying to be specific. But for some, that just rankles because they argue, rightly so to an extent, that, well, it was still Star Wars on home video straight through. Well, that was what was on the package. Yeah. The film had the subtitles since 81. And since we saw it on home video starting in 82, but okay, it's one of those battles that I feel like constantly comes up. So I've realized in recent years it's just not my hill to die on. I'm cool with it. Are you asking me if it's pre-special edition? Yeah. You want to get nitpicky? Let me know and I'll go into the nitpicky stuff for you.
You know what's interesting about that? With the exception of the episode 4 A New Hope subtitle in the crawl, I think most of those changes were supposed to be invisible, right? So you could
Yeah.
argue that, all of the various versions up until the 97 special edition were supposed to be either like little cosmetic tweaks or technical things that got through quality control or what have you. Um, Whereas 97 is, I think, the beginning of the multiple versions of Star Wars where it's like, no, I am revising this original film.
Yeah. These would be like version 1.1, 1.2,
Right.
1.3,
Yeah.
and then you get 2.0 with 97, and then they just keep
Yeah, now we're up to like
going.
2.7, maybe 2.8.
But I don't even go by numbers usually. I jokingly refer to them as like the special editions, the more special editions, the even more special editions, and there's the digital, even more special Foxless edition, and then there's the
Right.
was it even more special McClunky edition or something? They never got names. Only the special editions in 97 got names. So and they took the word special edition off the later ones. So it's like, what do we call them?
Right. So there's actually another sort of subtle distinction there. Like those were supposed to be invisible changes in like a sneaky way, where it's sort of like, no, 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 that rock was always in front of R2D2's face. It's like you just never
Yeah. And it
realized.
magically disappears from the other
Yeah.
angle. And it
Yeah.
was always meant to be that way. Yeah. It's weird because it's almost like the THX remastered edition, definitive collection, all that stuff. It's like that was Lucas saying, this was my clearest vision of my original film because of the technical limitations of the time. This is the cleanest it can look, the cleanest it can sound. This is the closest to my original vision in terms of presentation, thanks to the THX certification. But then everything after that is more of a tinkering type of thing. Like that was, I'm going to make it I'm going to take my vision and make sure that you saw what I meant you to see in 77. But then the other ones are more like, my vision wasn't ever able to be realized truly. So now I'm going to add and tweak all this stuff. But it's like, I don't know that it would ever have been like in the original vision to have Jedi rocks rather than Lefty Neck. Was that really the vision? I mean, I know he wanted a bigger musical number and it was a little bit smaller. So okay, sure, fine. Was a Ronto in your original vision? Well, I guess you wanted to be a little bit more crowded. Like, there's always a reason for most of them. I don't know about the rock with R2D2. That's probably the weirdest one, but
Yeah.
it's a different mindset, right? It's the I'm going to make it look as good as it can versus I'm actually going to change things to fit my vision that was in my head that was never ever to be on screen. It's almost like two phases of Lucas, but it's still that creator's vision takes precedent thing, which is probably why none of those later versions ever get different names and call them special editions or something. It's not this is the 2011 version or the 2019 version or the 2004 version. No, it's this is the film because according to Lucas, this is the version. Those other
Right.
ones were all just like rough drafts almost.
Right. And he can get away with saying, and he's not wrong, this is my version, this is my vision, this is what I always wanted it to be. The insidious thing about it, though, is that as you grow older, your vision changes, maybe even without you realizing that it has changed because it's still you. It's what you think, what you want. So, but without this devolving into a special edition conversation, you made me think of something. You were saying that the impetus for this 95 THX remastered release was how strong the sales were in the UK for Star Wars on VHS. And there was sort of a thought, well, what if we put some real marketing behind this? Like, how would it do? You're making me think this was probably brought to George Lucas. He already was working on the special editions. knowing that that was going to be his definitive version of what he wanted the public's perception of the definitive version of Star Wars to be. So that whole the original one last time thing was probably him saying, okay, but we have to make it clear that this is the old one, right? Which the marketing people were probably fine with because it's another way to promote it as
Oh yeah.
something
We
a
didn't
new,
call it FOMO back then, but I mean, it's
right.
FOMO
Yeah.
essentially, right? It's fear of missing out. It's if I don't get it now, I'm not going to be able to get it ever again.
Because you were saying like this was almost Lucas saying here is the best possible version of what I made in 77. But hearing everything you're saying, it actually strikes me, I don't think it was Lucas. I think it was probably the marketing department, the home video arm, saying I think we can really do something here and make some money. And George Lucas was probably like, okay, but from here on we're never showing these versions to anyone ever again.
Yeah, I think the remastering and the THX certification stuff, I think that was probably Lucas because he was very much focused
Yeah.
on that. And eventually that would help with the special editions and all later as they were cleaning up everything. But yeah, I definitely think it was probably more of the marketing thing. The story as it is told, there was it may have even been Hewlett himself. There was a story that was told online years ago explaining the way that 1994 UK stuff sort of played a role in the 1995 stuff. And the way they made it sound was certainly that the light bulb went off when it happened in the UK in 94 to cause the 95 stuff to exist at all. Like that would not have been something that probably would have happened had it not been for what happened in 94. So and Lucas tends to be someone who, for all of his quirks, probably isn't someone who would just be like out of nowhere, oh, by the way, hey, let's put out another one. I feel like that must have been somewhere within Fox Video more so than Lucas himself. But I could see him being the one behind the THX remastering side of
Yeah.
things because like he had some interviews and stuff that were on the definitive collection. So it seems as though that was kind of taking care of his baby. But then it's sort of a now you can market. Never let a good opportunity to market stuff go to waste, whether it's figures, books, whatever it might be.
The timing of this is also interesting because late summer 95 or fall 95 is when you have the renewal of the action figure line, the Power of the Force figures. I think that those were the first new Star Wars action figures since 1985, possibly. You also had the development, certainly, of Shadows of the Empire, which was sort of a dry run for releasing a new Star Wars film to see how it may perform. So it is in line with the broader marketing plans because it all seems to happen at this same second half of 1995. You have all this new merchandise activity all of a sudden.
I teach economics, and one of these things is like demand pull and supply push kind of stuff. So I think this is kind of a past push, future pull kind of thing that's going on here on either side of this. Because you've got the fact that interest in Star Wars has sort of gotten a little bit more reignited thanks to Heir to the Empire, Dark Empire, like the launch of the old expanded universe we now call the Legends continuity and all back in 91. So that's getting enough attention that maybe the stage is set for something else. But then also we have the hype starting for special editions, especially the prequels coming, pulling from the future. That kind of right here in the center, you get this flurry of activity. And it really doesn't die down all that much. Once it ramps up into like the late 90s, getting into the prequels and getting into the special editions, I mean, publishing goes nuts. You have all kinds of different product lines for toys and that sort of thing. It's really kind of the next giant wave of Star Wars. And this is sort of like that initial kind of cusp of it. It's like we've been on the side roads now, and as soon as we get to 95, okay, we're on the freeway. Let's go. And it just keeps blazing for years.
No, totally. It's also true because, if you watch the beginning making of documentary about the Phantom Menace, there's that famous video of George sending his kids off to school and walking upstairs to his office, starting to write the script for the first prequel.
All I need is an idea, right?
All
All I
is
need an idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's November 94. It's sort of interesting, especially in the context, if you think about, something that struck me about this whole release is the Leonard Maltin features at the beginning of these. It's a very interesting way. It's like really historicizing and placing into context the experience of George Lucas making this original trilogy, making it, seeing the success, dealing with what it is, et cetera, et cetera. And it's, if you think about it, what must be happening for him is he's now revisiting Star Wars for the first time since the early to mid 1980s, when he sort of, for various reasons, I guess, had to get a respite from it. And then now he's sort of like, okay, I am going to close the book on this experience and the original thing. I'm moving into this new phase with these new movies, and I'm doing Star Wars again. And if you think about it, it's all sort of happening at this same in the same year. He's starting to write the prequels. He's working on the special editions. He has this new video release that has this retrospective interview at the beginning, which is somewhat unusual, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like you get the sense looking at a lot of the interview stuff that he does around that time as he's talking about it and thinking about where he'd been in the years previous to that. It's almost kind of like this is his moment of, this is my life again. Like, this was my life for so many years, and then it wasn't. And now it is again. And the one through line, it's not even, I would say the kids are the kids are a big part of why he wasn't active for so long, but they weren't around as in the super early days. The through line, aside from something like that, where he's putting his priorities, is pushing the technology forward, pushing filmmaking forward. Because even when he wasn't super active as a filmmaker, his company was still doing things to push things forward. So it's kind of like he was able to sort of step back and know that the main drive that he has was still continuing. But now it's okay, this thing that let me even do that in the first place, that's going to be my life again. And the crazy thing is that, I mean, for him, really, it's his life again for way longer than just the prequels, because shortly after that, he gets into Clone Wars stuff, and it really takes all the way through. And we're even seeing the echoes of it afterwards. Disney buys Lucasfilm. Eventually, we have new films and everything and so on. But even when we finally get the 4K versions of the films in 2019 on Disney Plus and on home video in 2020, McClunky, that's a Lucas-ism. That was Lucas tinkering with them in trying to get them ready for 3D conversion, which is where those 4Ks even came from. So even after selling off the company, to some extent, it's still that echo of his last times when he was so seeped in it. Although I will say, it's very nice, though, to see, and maybe it's because I'm an old softie now, I'm a dad too now, but it's so great to see once he did step away, it seems like he's just enjoying life,
Hope so.
enjoying everything going on. Like when you see him and he does his interviews, it seems like retirement is treating him well, I guess you could say. But man, would he have known in 95 or 94 when he's sitting down to this that he's basically going to be dedicating not just the next 5 to 10 years, but even longer than that of his life again to this thing that it was his obsession and his complete world for so long? I doubt it, but it's a nice moment of transition. All I need is an idea. Him plopping down is just this perfect starting point. Realistically, of course, he was already working on the other stuff, but to me, that's that moment in time that captures so well. He's at the peak of the roller coaster. He's about to start flying down for a while, you know?
And he has no idea how far down it goes from all the way up there. He can't see all the way
Yeah.
down. No, that's really well put. Just as an aside, I know it's not strictly home video, but StarWars.com recently announced they are going to be re-releasing the original Star Wars theatrically in a couple years for the 50th anniversary. Do you think it's the 4K version that we have already, or do you think maybe it's something with further changes, or might it be the original unaltered film somehow? I don't know.
It's hard to say. At this point, there has been some hubbub with some screenings of the original in recent memory.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't know. It's hard to say. And it's funny because you can see them doing things for the anniversary theatrically. I'm wondering what they're going to do with home video even for the anniversary, because home video usually misses and does almost nothing on anniversaries for Star Wars, on the big anniversaries. The special editions hit, but that was because they were in theaters that year. They did a new trailer and some stickers on stuff in 87. But 2007, hell, that's the 1 year from 2004 until 2008 that there isn't a reissue of the original trilogy.
It's a good
2017, there's nothing for the original stuff. So I wonder if we're going to see anything home video wise. My hope would be that when it shows up in theaters, and this is a hope that will never come to pass, is that they actually secretly, like they did and eventually showed at Celebrations, maybe they secretly completed the 3D conversion for the original trilogy that they were working on. I would love to see that. And maybe then Blu-ray 3D, although it's not really, they're not even doing that in the US and we have to import it from Japan. But I don't see it happening. I would hope that if they're really going to make that big a deal out of it, though, it's going to be the actual original version, which means they've cleaned it up to the point where hopefully that also means we get a home video release of it shortly thereafter. That would give me hope for that. But it seems like most of the time when they're talking about the films, it's whatever the newest cut is. There's always calls for the originals to be released. Surely Disney knows it'd be a license to print money. Even if they're cutting back on a lot of their home video stuff, surely that would be a license to print money. It feels like it's more that within Lucasfilm itself, there are a lot of people who still have a very clear personal loyalty to Lucas himself. They want to, adhere to his wishes that the newest one is the quote unquote real one. But I have to wonder, assuming physical media is even still around at that point, if after you have no Filoni, no Kennedy, once those who had that personal relationship with Lucas are out of the picture, will that be when the pressure builds and they finally do, whether Lucas wants it or not, put out those original versions? I don't know. I mean, I would hope though. I would hope we see something like that because it's weird. Like, so there have been moments where they've tried to commemorate major films. When AFI, the American Film Institute, did their 100 Years, 100 Movies for American filmmaking, they did a massive boxes set for the so-called Century Collection, 100 movies from that list in 4 20-pound each VHS boxes. They're all stored in my living room because I can't even fit them in my office here. But what was in it? The full screen 97 special edition.
Whoa.
And then when 20th Century Fox does its 75th anniversary DVD box set, what's in it? The 2004 DVD, just with a new label on it. So even when they're trying to say, we are celebrating this as a preservation of this part of American filmmaking, even then it hasn't been the actual cut that made the splash and made the mark in the first place. It's just whatever the newest version is at the time. It has made me somewhat cynical, I guess you could say, on what to expect.
Though, as you say, in the last couple of years in particular, it seems like there have been some authorized screenings of the original version. And even if you look at that Light and Magic documentary series on Disney Plus, that's all about Industrial Light and Magic, the clips that they use primarily from the original Star Wars are cleaned up 4K clips of the original cut, which makes sense in the context of that because it is about the effects work that they were actually doing then. But I also noted actually for, I think, all of the films, like even when they were showing clips from Jurassic Park, for example, which is from 93, the version that they showed, it wasn't whatever the most recent 4K home video release is. It seems like it's a scan of a film print from the time. So even if it's just an aesthetic choice for that specific documentary series, it does show that it exists somewhere.
Which was always the thing, right? It was always when we put together
doesn't exist anymore.
THX and then the special edition, it doesn't exist anymore. Well, that's not true. That particular thing that you maybe cut up, okay, that one doesn't exist anymore. But there are film prints that exist, and you have the technology to do cleaning. So that's kind of a disingenuous answer. But I think that the more time goes on and the more technology makes it easier to take something like that and make a clean version that you could show, the further time goes along and technology increases, the more of a lame excuse that is. I think at the time, it probably was, at least to some extent, a valid enough excuse. Yeah. But these days, give me a good film print like what we're showing and clean. If fans can do cleanups, then certainly professionals can do cleanups. And I don't think anybody would care if there's a little bit of film grain in the friggin' thing.
The fan restoration efforts are incredibly impressive. The things they have been able to do, from scanning and even mixing and matching from various prints from collectors. Yeah, if they can do that without the original negative, imagine what actually is possible. Yeah, so I don't buy that for a second. Before we started recording, you very tantalizingly showed me some releases from around the world. You mentioned the Faces release, as we think of it, was really just a North American thing, and everywhere else in the world had different versions. So if you could discuss what some of those were.
Sure. So the US, we got, again, the Faces covers, Vader, Stormtrooper, and Yoda. We got a full screen set, right? The brick full screen. There's actually a version of that has Spanish subtitles that I managed to get my hands on. That was also a US release because, you don't have DVD where you can switch audio options. Actually, there's also descriptive audio version. I didn't pull that out, but there's a descriptive audio version for those with a visual impairment. That's very hard to find. You have to get those basically through libraries. And then we had the widescreen sets. There were two versions of that. The widescreen in a shoebox type that's a top loader, and then one that's kind of a side loader, kind of a very flat case. And then we did get the Laserdisc versions that were extended play rather than standard play like the definitive collection was. But no box set, just those individually. But for us, that was basically it. Um, and at that point for us for Star Wars, it was basically just VHS and Laserdisc. Initially in the early days, we had Laserdisc CED, Beta, and VHS. In fact, Beta and VHS were where we got A New Hope for the first time for rental in May of '82, but we actually got Laserdisc and CED for purchase before VHS and Beta. Those were June and August for Laserdisc and CED, and then it was September we could actually buy VHS and Beta. But Beta's been like long dead here, but not everywhere. It's one of those formats that sort of linger in some areas, kind of like Blu-ray 3D now is lingering in Japan, but it's gone most other places. VCD lasted longer in Indonesia than most places. Well, if you look at Mexico in '95, they get a VHS THX remastered edition, but they also get Beta THX remastered edition, which is mind-boggling to me.
That is incredible.
And it's the era in which some of the Beta cassettes are like different colors instead of black, so they're kind of cool. But yeah, so you got those as kind of an oddball. Really, the UK is where, fittingly, I guess, because they were the ones who proved that this could work in '94, they really kind of went all out. So the UK gets 5 different boxed sets in '95. No Laserdisc from what I can see. It looks like the newest Laserdisc that they're going to get is going to actually be the special editions in '97. I've yet to, like, you look on laserdiscdatabase.com or LDDB.com, I don't see anything about 95 for Laserdisc in the UK. They weren't really as big on Laserdisc. The main packaging that you would see for 3 of these is sort of a thick slipcover. So there's a thick slipcover version of the set, and it's each film inside a clamshell case, which was they're usually what they would do. They wouldn't have like the little paper sleeves like we had. They had the nice plastic cases. So open on one side for the cassettes to come out, but it's again a brick, I tend to call it. But all the artwork on it is artwork for each film. It's the cover art from the individual films put on the sides of the box. But it's by a guy named John Alban, which is basically the international artwork. Pretty much anywhere you look, including Mexico, it's John Alban art. But they had sort of a regular version of that, and that was full screen. Weirdly, they had a similar one, basically in a cardboard box. It's the exact same cassettes, but it's just a super thin cardstock box around it. Kind of a weird variant of that. And then they did a limited edition version, still full screen, in a Vader slipcover. Same cassettes, same packages, same cases.
It's sort of combining the key art from the 2 releases a little bit.
Yep. So you got this, which closest thing to what we have, except it doesn't have like the battles and stuff on or anything like that, but pretty close. And then they also had a widescreen set that was a limited edition in a regular sized case. As I scrape dust off of it, you might hear my scraping. But yeah, the Stormtrooper cover. And the cool thing about that is that for these, and you see this in, I think, Australia too. But if you look at the case, I'm sort of pull out Return of the Jedi as an example as I'm looking at it, so you can see it at least. For the widescreen, they really kind of wanted to make people understand what widescreen was. So whereas the regular cover art is basically just the John Alban cover art, and it has a little sticker that says, like, includes George Lucas interview. For widescreen, there's actually a section of the packaging on the bottom that says widescreen and shows you what a widescreen picture is. An example screenshot from the movie. I love that. That is one of the, granted, it's like, well, duh, of course, but back then, that's amazing to do that, to actually make it clear to people what it is they're actually about to purchase. Well, those are kind of their standard sets. They also, this is where we get the origin of what is sort of one of the holy grail sets for a lot of Star Wars home video collectors. One that's well known, but people usually don't realize what it is. And that is the so-called executor set, as we usually call it. But that's not what it's actually called. It's not its actual name. It's called the VHS Definitive Collection, right? Named the same as the Laserdisc set. And it's this package, it's a tin package, looks like it should be cargo. I'm going to sit on my desk here so I can open it up. It looks like it should be cargo for the Executor, the Superstar Destroyer. Has the symbol on it. It's this nice kind of embossed box. Opens up on a hinge. Only 20,000 made, by the way. So it's one of those early releases with an actual numbered amount. Has a little kind of flimsy plastic cover that goes over top. Unfortunately, that is more solid than the plastic insert that holds everything. That gets really brittle over time. So most of these you'll find have a lot of cracks in the actual insert that holds everything. But it has a full script book inside it for all 3 films. It's
Whoa.
got, let's see, it has multiple matte painting cards of different matte paintings that they did. 1, 2, 3, I think it's 6, right? Yep, 6 of
Wow.
those. There's a little folder with a certificate with an individual number out of the 20,000. It's got art prints of each film's John Alvin cover art in it.
By the way,
Uh,
those John Alvin posters are gorgeous.
oh
They're
yeah, they're
beautiful.
amazing. Way more stylish than our face. Our faces edition is recognizable, but it's
Right.
not
Yeah.
beautiful. These
Mm.
are chef's kiss, so to speak.
John Alvin was a very accomplished, well-known painter of movie posters. So the fact that they commissioned him to do those for Star Wars, I'm actually surprised that those posters aren't more widely, available.
Yeah, they're nice. I mean, they were commissioned for this, as far as I understand, like for the actual home video release. Maybe there's some contractual thing, but yeah, you would
Probably.
expect those to have
Yeah.
been everywhere because they're just beautiful. There's a program book that tells you what's on the cassettes, which I'll come back to. The VHS cassettes, there are 4, just like in the 1992 special widescreen or special letterbox collector's edition in the US. So you have A New Hope. They're all in these cases that have the title on the sides, but the actual front is a lightsaber just held by 2 hands, kind of like the Return of the Jedi poster, with a different color for each film. So A New Hope is blue. Empire, what do you want to guess?
Red, I'm gonna say.
Oh yeah, red,
Yeah.
red. Jedi,
Green.
green, of course. And then there's
Beautiful.
another one that is actually from Star Wars: The Jedi: The Making of a Saga, like in '92 for the US, that has all 3. But that's not what makes the VHS cassettes themselves all that cool. I'm slowly putting them back here so I can grab the program booklet because these are not on regular SP speed. Now they're PAL. They won't play it in an American player, so don't try to get this and try to play it at home unless you got an international VHS player, which I actually have in our kitchen now. But basically, they're not on the slowest speed that you can only fit about 2 hours per cassette. Instead, they switch speeds to include bonus features on the VHS cassettes. And it's basically what we got on the Definitive Collection Laserdisc set for the most part. So, like, for example, you take Just a New Hope, right? You get the entirety of the Making of Star Wars documentary, the whole thing, plus the theatrical trailer from 77, the 30-second US TV spot, the theatrical trailer from the 78 re-release, the one from the 78 re-release with the Academy Award information, from the 81 re-release, the 82 re-release, and then War Stories, an interview with George Lucas, Star Wars Galaxy narrated by Ralph McQuarrie, and a tour of the Lucasfilm archives, all from the Definitive Collection Laserdisc. And it's like that for all 3 of them. So SPFX The Empire Strikes Back, Classic Creatures Return of the Jedi. This box is all 3 films and all 3 classic documentaries and a bunch of other stuff and a bunch of physical goodies in one box, one limited edition box. It's outstanding. And we got nothing even remotely comparable to it.
Wow.
It's mind blowing. And the fact that it was because it was just a UK thing does make this very sought out by collectors. It's one of the few instances, like you see a lot of collectors who are like, I'm going to collect from my region because I want to be able to watch it. This is one where a lot of folks are like, I don't care if I can watch it or not. This is amazing. I want this in my collection. And I can still find them for relatively okay prices. Obviously, with the way that VHS has spiked with speculation and everything recently, most VHS is going to be more expensive than it was before. But this, for a long time at least, was not as hard to find as some things, and usually like a cornerstone. If somebody was getting into international collecting, this would be part of it in some fashion.
Yeah, just hearing you describe what's on that release, I'm retroactively very jealous and upset. In particular for the supplementary material, like as a kid at that age, like I lived for those documentaries and they were hard to track down. I remember some of that stuff, like the special features on the definitive Laserdisc. I got a VHS bootleg, I guess you'd have to call it, of the Laserdisc's special features from like a dealer's room at a sci-fi convention. And I was like, where is this from? How do I not know where this is from? Because this is amazing and I want more of this. Um, yeah, that's really interesting. Do you have any idea why all of that cool stuff was produced for the international market and not here at the US?
I mean, I feel like that one I think was a UK specific thing. I think part of it was they had already there's a cynical side and there's like the optimistic side. The optimistic side of me is the hey, they were the place that proved that it could be done. So they're the ones who are really going to also go all out in 95, right? And that our market was more of kind of a well, let's see type of thing because we weren't where it had been proven. The other side of me though thinks that it was a oh crap, we already just resold this film last year. We've got to do something to draw people in even more now beyond just the THX thing. But I think part of it, I really do think that there was just an appreciation for the films, and there is the heritage of the films and the shooting in the UK that sometimes you see the UK
True.
market kind of lean into it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
point.
but it really, and I'm not entirely sure why. But you do see differences, like with the Mexican thing where there's the beta cassettes, um, and different media tends to spike and fade in different regions at different times. So this seemed to be one of the instances where they really leaned into it, but also they hadn't gotten something like our 1992 special letterbox collector's edition that had the widescreen copies on VHS. There, they had sort of regular releases in widescreen around the time. So to some degree, it was their time. Right? It was their time to have something that nobody else got.
Fair enough.
And then we'll see it come up again later. Like there was in later years, like there have been. I don't know if anybody knows there are sequel trilogy box sets out there on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K, just never in the United States.
I had no
Australia
clue.
got stuff like that. UK got stuff, but not 4K. France got them, not over here. There's always this weird disconnect between what we see on our side of the pond and what we see usually in PAL regions kind of as a whole. Even after PAL is really a thing, we still just kind of see these regional differences, which is why I'm so fascinated by it, right? I mean, I started out collecting US stuff. My first edition of A Saga on Home Video was specifically US stuff. When I revamped it for the second edition, that 3-volume, 1,000-page thing, which is the current version of it, I really included a lot of stuff from outside the US within there because I always feel like you don't it's hard to necessarily appreciate what we got when we just lived with it at the time. Like we just remember it because it was what we got, you know? And sometimes we can appreciate certain releases for what they did, like 2004 with it first time on DVD and stuff like that. But to be able to compare it to other regions and see how and why they differed, to me, that's the more fascinating thing, right? That's where you can really kind of see the patterns emerge and the behaviors change from region to region. Like, and sometimes it's weird. Like when we get the 2020 Skywalker Saga box sets, the US and the UK, we had the UK had more options than we did in the US. The US, it was just that one big set from Best Buy with 4K and Blu-ray and digital. The UK got that with no digital, but also got a Blu-ray set and a DVD set. But if you look at Japan, they got a giant, fancy schmancy box set, glossy cover. The art book wasn't built into the book with the pages with the discs. It was a separate little art book, really nice looking. But they had 4K film discs and Blu-ray bonus feature disc, but no Blu-ray film disc. Because who needs it if you got 4K? Which was a new thing, but their market has usually been ahead of us on adopting the new tech. And in some cases, holding on to tech longer than we did, like Laserdisc, they held on to longer than we did for sure. And now they're holding on to Blu-ray 3D longer than we did. But for 95, the UK is really the outlier with the amazing array of stuff, some of which is pretty redundant. And the US is the outlier in the sense that we had that packaging that is so distinctive now. And yet you ask somebody in like Australia about them, they're, what? Closest thing Australia got to look like ours. You mentioned the making of Star Wars, the Corn Pops thing a while back. There was a re-release of that in Australia. I believe it was in 95 alongside these with a Vader cover, kind of like what we saw in the US, but a little bit more of his face showing. I call the strictly limited release. I don't know what the strictly part is. Yeah, but they got something looking like it as a supplemental thing, but still their packaging is like the UK, it's like Mexico. If you look at the Japanese laser discs that get released, so the Japanese laser discs, they get the definitive collection in '94 instead of '95 or instead of '93. So they wind up getting a dust jacket on, Creative Impulse. But then when you look at '95, they get what's called the collection. They get a two laser disc set actually in '95. They get another version of the definitive collection with a shoebox type opening and then a swap out of like a bonus kind of stuff. But then you get a thing called the collector set on Laserdisc. And sure enough, what's in the collector set? It's when you open it up, the packaging, it's that John Alban art. So even when they weren't calling it the THX remastered edition or anything like that, even though they weren't marketing as this, even though the outer box looks nothing like any of the stuff we see with 95 in the US or UK, sure enough, inside, it's that international artwork. Artwork wise, we are absolutely the outlier on these things.
Yeah, and in this case, I do feel like we got the short end of the stick because remember even as a kid seeing the cover art for the international versions and sort of being like, those look much cooler than the ones that we got. Just one more question for you. The widescreen editions, how common or uncommon was it to see like circa 1995 widescreen versions of films released on VHS?
I mean, not super common. I mean, we see like a widescreen of Spaceballs at one point.
Really?
It's on VHS. I think it's just the one. I've got a few. I think I got four of. I think there's four VHS releases, and one of them was widescreen, if I'm remembering correctly. But that's a whole other rabbit hole. Spaceballs is a whole other rabbit hole. Way too many releases.
We'll have to do a
And always
separate
the same disc over and over again.
we'll have to do
Um,
a separate episode on that then.
I, I'll have to take up drinking. But no, in this era, like the 1992 widescreen VHS, that was weird and different. By 95 and into the late 90s, it starts to be a little more commonplace, but usually only for kind of major stuff. And still, you had people who didn't quite really understand what this was all about.
Still,
What's interesting to me is that it was like DVD is kind of where widescreen became more commonplace and more accepted. But it's almost like the traditional film goer who doesn't pay attention to this stuff in depth, who just wants to watch the movie, who cares if it's full screen or widescreen. Um, I feel like it almost felt as though the transition of formats was seen almost as the transition of full screen to widescreen, right? That widescreen was a niche thing and you had to get a special copy labeled specially if you really wanted it in the VHS era, even in the latter VHS era. And it's really only the DVD era when it starts to be something more accepted. And relatively quickly, you see, the full screen DVDs drop by the wayside. Like if you look in the US, we had full screen. We didn't actually have a full screen DVD release of Phantom Menace in 2001. It didn't happen until 2002 because it was almost like it was an oversight. Like, oops, there really is still a market for these. And we get the full screen and widescreen up through 2006 for each new release in the US. It's not until 2008 that we get rid of the full screen. But if you look at places like Japan and the UK, places like that, they just went, okay, DVD, widescreen, period, done. We're not doing full screen on DVD for these Star Wars films. So even going back to Phantom Menace, it's widescreen, period. That's why if you look at, like releases out of Japan and the UK, they don't, on their DVD releases of that era, in the US, they'll have that gold or blue bar at the top or silver bar at the top saying full screen or widescreen. You look at them, there's no bar on the top most of the time because there's no need to say what that was. Or if there is a bar, it's not saying anything about format. I'm saying like limited edition or something like that. So yeah, it was not super common. It was becoming more common. Like a lot happened in terms of making it a little bit more common between like 92 and 95, but still it just wasn't the commonplace thing. I don't know that I would ever say that in the VHS era, it was a common thing or a
Yeah,
commonly
no.
accepted thing until we hit DVD. And then suddenly, that's a selling point. Like, oh my gosh, I can watch this in widescreen. You could have watched this in widescreen years ago if you bought this. You know what? I'm happy you've discovered widescreen. Again, not a hill to die on, right? It's the,
I bet.
there's the acceptance and there's the if you know better, don't yuck their yum.
I mean, first of all, I didn't know that they were still producing full screen DVDs as late as 2006, 2007. That's somewhat mind boggling to me. But I wonder if that also had something to do with the widespread adoption of 16:9 TV sets.
Yeah. Yeah, probably that's a big thing too, because you could finally get those and you would have your anamorphic widescreen
Yeah, like
DVDs and
you
stuff
wouldn't.
like that. Yeah.
Right. So if you had like a 4:3 set for the average viewer, the black bars at the top and the bottom, even for like a CinemaScope aspect ratio, wouldn't be so pronounced to be objectionable.
And
Um,
the opposite's also true in that when you start to see people getting widescreen TVs more, which were a thing even before like you really went like full HD and stuff like that.
right.
And you think people thinking widescreen is weird, making it something that caused them to not necessarily understand or gravitate towards, even if it's giving them more picture. In the 4:3 TV screen era, the flip side is also true that you probably saw a lot more adoption of DVDs that are widescreen and even VHS is widescreen once we got the widescreen televisions, not just because now there's not as much black bar on top and bottom, but because if I do watch one of my old full screen productions, now there's giant black areas on the left and right. And that's almost even more jarring.
Then it also becomes clear that you are literally losing the picture that's supposed to be there. Like,
Yeah,
whereas
suddenly it's like there's an understanding of, oh,
it's like,
that's what the
oh,
difference
there's the
is.
whole picture I'm missing. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they didn't
um,
just cover the top and bottom of your screen before.
right.
But I mean, but also one thing I tend to think about is, in the era in which you really start to see the beginnings of this stuff, these days screens are everywhere. This was still the era sometimes where there was the big screen TV that you watched in the living room and everybody watched on that. And
Yep.
then maybe there were some other sets around. Maybe those other sets had a VHS player attached to them. Maybe they didn't. But the chances of someone actually doing a side by side comparison on two screens, if they were that nerdy, to really see the difference and demonstrate it,
True.
wouldn't really have actually been a thing. It would almost have to be here, mom, let me show you what you're seeing here. And now let me switch cassettes and show you what you're seeing here to really get that across. I don't know
That's
that that was as common a thing. It's just sort of we accept it. And TV, if we watched something on TV, it was still 4:3. You almost never saw widescreen on television at the time. Widescreen was the weird thing. And thankfully now, it has become the accepted format, but it took a while, but it was nice to see it because, we had seen so many different releases of the films over and over again without widescreen being an option. I would still say one of the best ways to watch the original trilogy is to watch the Japanese special collection laser discs from back then. And for A New Hope, if you can get your hands on the later printing, the fixed printing of the laser disc for A New Hope, the special widescreen edition in the US, the one that was pressed by a company called Technodisc, it's gorgeous visually. But you have to sift through some crap because those same Fox Video Special Widescreen Collection editions had two previous versions as far as who was pressing them, and they had an aspect ratio issue. Those are those ones where the aspect ratio kept changing and getting narrower because of how they covered up the Japanese subtitles, and it was like a weird process they
yeah.
used for it. I actually did a whole video where I showed that version on a TV screen and put Post-its on the TV screen to show like how it kept getting narrower. Post-its everywhere.
Yeah.
Don't do anything technically savvy. Just point your iPad at the TV and use Post-its. But it got the point across, so it's okay.
Absolutely.
It works. Low tech
Well,
sometimes is the best.
so just in the interest of wrapping up here, what do you think? Here's a strange question, but I don't quite know how else to ask it. In your mind, what do you think was the significance of the THX Faces release? Does it have a legacy?
I think it does. I think it does. I think that because of when it came out and the building excitement for Star Wars, with the prequels coming, the special editions coming, the hype of One Last Time, it became the set that most folks would have bought. Maybe not the widescreen version. Although this was the first time that the widescreen version wasn't something special you had to hunt as like a limited edition-y type thing or a special version somewhere. You could find it. Like I got mine. So at the time, a buddy of mine was working at Best Buy, and he was like the crack dealer for everybody. You give him the money, and he'll buy it for you and bring it to school the next day because it was all the way on the other side of town, and we weren't driving yet, or most of us weren't driving yet. So that was kind of a big deal. It has the fact that it's probably one of the first times people were exposed to the widescreen version, but also because it was more commonplace. It wasn't one of the ones that had just been reissued repeatedly in the past. It had some hype around it. For better or worse, once the special editions hit, this becomes the one that people latch on to, right? The people who don't want the special edition, don't want to see the special edition stuff. These are
Right.
common to find. They are relatively cheap, even in the aftermarket later. And they are the best way on VHS, at least, to see this version of the films that, again, For most people, it's not about what version is it. This is the fifth or whatever, or the third on home video. Is it pre-special edition or not? That's what I care about. Okay, yes, it is. This is what I want to own. I think over time, the longer we've gone since 95, or really since 97, and to some degree, I would say an inflection point in 2004, the longer we've gone where it's been special editions, and even when it hit DVD for the first time and there was so much hype, it was still special editions. Not only that, but it was a different, updated special edition. The further along we've gone and the less hope there seems to be for getting the original versions in any modern format, the more this one becomes an important marker because it's the one people usually turn to unless they're really nerdy and they want to go for the even earlier versions or something like that. This is kind of that one that becomes that marker in time, so to speak, which is funny because it seems like it was just we want to push this out to get more sales one more time, and we weren't even going to do it had the UK not shown that it was going to be so good. And it's not even a new product per se. It's based on the masters of something we put out a couple of years ago. So at the time, behind the scenes, it probably wasn't as big a deal. And yet looking back on it now, for so many people, this was like the end of an era. It was that one last time really means something profound to a lot of people. See it again for the first time is almost, again, for some segments of Star Wars fandom who really want the originals in whatever form they can find it, they really detest the special editions, Disney or pre. See it again for the first time is almost like saying a bad word. It's almost like cussing about Star Wars, that it's their mind of saying that's when it all went wrong or whatever. I tend to not be so hyperbolic. I love seeing all the different versions. I think it's fascinating to see the differences between the versions, though I want to see something where they give us a set, kind of like what they did, I think, with Blade Runner as well. I want us to see a set where everything's on 4K disc and Blu-ray disc, and I want to see every major cut in one package, celebrate that 50th anniversary, or whenever you want to do it before physical media is truly dead. In absence of that, these are that last gasp that so many people cling to.
No, I think you're exactly right. And yes, I would love a Blade Runner-esque version where they give every major cut of the films the same treatment. I would even love, I don't know if this will ever happen, but I would love to see that initial rough assembly.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
even know if it exists in color, but that initial rough version of Star Wars that I know exists in the Lucasfilm archives. It'd be really super cool if we could get our hands on that. But again, I'm not holding my breath. Um, One thing I really want to get to the bottom of is in the Leonard Maltin interviews in this set, who dressed George Lucas in that black turtleneck? I've never seen him wear a turtleneck before or since, and it's a very specific look for that moment in time that I respect.
Yep. Come on, George, it's fancy schmancy. Or okay, fancy enough. Come on.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It does stand out in that sense. It stands out as it's a more formal feeling interview than most that he's done. And I think you just put the finger on why. I don't know why I felt like it felt more formal, except maybe the way that Maltin was asking the question, how way Maltin is dressed. But you're right. Lucas's dress is different. Most of the time he looks so casual when he's talking about it. Most of the time it's like a flannel or something. And he's just kind of riffing on Star Wars. I think it's even a very casual, I know, right, that a very casual attire almost makes it feel like an American version of like a Han Solo-y type look, but not quite as roguish. Even when he's doing interviews on stuff like the Definitive Collection, he just kind of sitting back in his office. He's talking, you come in the middle of his day and he's just taking time for you type of thing. Whereas this was like, oh, this is an occasion. I'm gonna get
Yeah, and you
fancy.
really get the sense that like somebody dressed him. You know what I mean?
I
It was
honestly,
like,
I can't speak to that. I dress myself and it's never good. So I that's why I always go to my wife when I'm dressing our son. I'm like, okay, do these actually match? Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
well, Nathan, thank you so much again. This was more than I could have hoped for. I learned so much from you. If anyone wants to hear more about Star Wars on home video, where can people find you?
Oh boy. So let's see. So if you want the book, A Saga on Home Video, second edition, 3 volumes. First one covers live action films up to 2015. Second volume covers 2016 onward for live action. Then everything else, TV, behind the scenes, whatever is volume 3. Those are on Amazon. You can get those hardback, paperback, all full color inside. Just a question of the paper type. And there's a digital version if you use the Kindle app. There's a digital version of it. Um, let's see. On YouTube, YouTube, my username is Chrono Radio, but you can just search from the Star Wars home video library. That's my main series of 600-ish episodes on different stuff. Star Wars home video year by year is just wrapping up. That is a yearly series looking at the primary things each year from 77 up to 2024. It's now becoming a yearly series because I can't talk about 2025 till it's done. There's also a Star Wars Home Video trivia series that I did. 10 episodes on YouTube, to Star Wars Home Video trivia. 10 episodes, 10 questions each. Check yourself as you go, but it is AP level stuff is the way that I look at it, because it is some hard questions sometimes. And then the newest thing, or I should say, if you want to discuss Star Wars Home Video, there's a Star Wars Home Video group on Facebook. It's just Star Wars Home Video, run by Justin Berger. I'm a moderator, great community. But also one thing that I did that is recent, I created a spreadsheet to track my own collection with tabs for each individual format and all kinds of information about each release. And because I wanted to make that available to the community, I just took mine and just put it online on my website. It's 3 different domains all go to the same place: StarWarsFanWars.com, A SAGA ON HOMEVideo.com, NathanButler.com. Doesn't matter, same place. But it's basically my spreadsheet is now up for people to download so that they could create their own and just maybe copy lines from it or whatever of what they have. The only idiosyncrasy with it is that if you have a multi-format release like Blu-ray and DVD in the same package, I list that on both the DVD sheet and the Blu-ray sheet. So I don't actually know how many items are on there, but if you include the fact that I've separated them out if they're multi-format, it's like 1,500 listings, give or take. So if you're creating a spreadsheet to collect your own, or to track your own collection, grab my headers, grab the rows that apply to you, copy, paste, don't reinvent the wheel. That's just another resource that I put out there very recently, but it's, I don't know how many people are actually using it. I'm using it to track my own, but I figured might as well share in case somebody could get some use out of my labors of doing that. So I'm a little bit everywhere, but it's home video is so much the focus now that pretty much it's all home video wherever you look.
I just downloaded a copy of that spreadsheet. I can't wait to dig into it and take in all the various releases in one place. Will you promise to return when they eventually release the multi-edition definitive collection of all the versions?
Absolutely. Or before, right?
Or
Because
before.
who knows if that'll happen. Or
Yeah,
before. I always love sitting down to talk home video stuff where it's not just me talking to the iPad screen, to the
yeah,
audience that can't
I
speak back.
understand.
Because it's fun. It's a passion here. It's a weird, nerdy little tiny niche, but it's a great community. So it's been great to be able to have conversations about this stuff that's so near and dear to me.
No, I really enjoyed it. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed it as well. We are trashcompod.com and trashcompod across all social media, and we will see you on the next one.